Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Brothers and sisters, alhamdulillah, we have a special guest with us now, and that is our dear fellow MP Sam Tarry, a Member of Parliament for Ilford South. Hello, Sam. How are you doing?
Assalamu alaikum. Good to see everyone.
Pleasure. Nice to have you on this platform here on Iman channel. We have some questions for yourself. I mean, we hear you've been very active over the past few days doing some work for Palestine. What exactly have you been doing?
Well, look, I mean, clearly, I'm sure many of your viewers would have seen an absolutely appalling situation on Al-Aqsa Mosque with, incursions, attacks on one of the third most holy sites of Islam. We've seen, obviously, retaliations hitting Gaza, one of the most densely populated places on the entire planet. And so, many civilian casualties again. And look, the anger is growing. We've been challenging the government in Parliament directly. There was a debate today. Many MPs, particularly Labour MPs, got up and said to the British government, you need to act. You need to act now to say to the Israeli government they need to stop this aggression and actually get around the table and negotiate a genuine and just peace settlement for the Palestinians who have been suffering in an terrible way for so many decades now. And look, I speak from experience. My first visit to Palestine was with a young group of people from Ilford. I was only about 16 or 17 at the time, and I've actually been half a dozen times since then to go and show solidarity, to meet not just Palestinians, but Israelis too, and hear their side of the story. But when you go to Palestine and you see the occupation firsthand, the brutality that people have to live in every single day, the way that people are built out of their own land, that their land is annexed and taken from them, and every day are humiliated as they try and go about their daily business, you can only come away with one conclusion, that this is one of the most unjust conflicts in the entire planet, and there must be justice for Palestine. And for this to be happening in the most holy month of Ramadan is absolutely disgraceful. And you can see not just in Ilford, but across the country and across the world, not just Muslims, but any people of good conscience standing up and saying that this is absolutely wrong and must be stopped. And there are many things that we can do. We need to be pushing the government, and are we pushing the government to stop sales of arms to Israel? We shouldn't be arming a country that's acting in such an aggressive way against a civilian population. We are calling on both Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary, and Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, to talk directly to their counterparts in Israel to call a ceasefire as soon as possible before more civilian lives are lost. And it does matter. Israel does not want to become a pariah state, but it will do if it continues these actions. And British parliamentarians across all parties have been stepping up and condemning the terrible situation and terrible scenes that we've seen. And I know that many of your viewers will be, like me, incredibly angry about this situation.
Sam, I have a question for you. I really appreciate your support. I want you to elaborate perhaps more on your experience. That will be one of my latter questions. But, more importantly, for many watching at home that perhaps don't know what to do, but really want to help the Palestinian cause, what can they do?
So look, there's many things you can do. Actually, if you live in Ilford, writing to me as your local MP, I've had over 3,000 people writing to me. So that means when I stand up in Parliament or when I write letters to the Foreign Secretary, I can do that in genuine knowledge that I have the support of my constituents. There are a number of different campaign groups out there that you can go on their website and send quick emails into your MPs, but also get involved in Palestine Solidarity Campaign. There is the Palestine Solidarity Campaign itself, which is quite famous and is spread right across Britain. There are many places on, say, if you're a student, you can go and get involved in your local Palestine Solidarity group. And if you're involved in a trade union, there are many trade unions that are active in sending delegations out to Palestine. In Ilford, we're going to be looking to put on a programme of activities and educational events, really talking to people about what is going on in Palestine. But educate yourself. And if you ever have the opportunity, do go and visit, show the solidarity if you can. That isn't an opportunity that's open to everyone. But believe me, I've taken people to Palestine and it's changed their minds and changed their views because they've seen just a horrific situation that faces Palestinians every single day. But what I would also say is don't lose hope. There are hundreds of thousands of Israelis who also want justice for Palestinians. They don't support the Netanyahu government and its actions. They don't support the bombing of civilians. They don't support the occupation. And we need to also build links with them, because actually that is how we will build a sustainable peace in which Israel can be secure, in which the Palestinians have their own homeland and their own national country, their own country liberated as it should be, in which they're able to stand proud and go about their lives and build their businesses and just do all the things that we take for normal as granted in Ilford, that they can't. They suffer every single day, humiliated, and that must end. It must end as soon as possible.
We really appreciate the support, Sam. You know, I was actually blessed to have the opportunity to actually travel to Palestine as well. One of the saddest experiences that I witnessed was around the area of the mosque. I saw a man with his son, and he pointed towards his home, and he said, and I could see tears within his eyes, and he said that this is the first day I've been allowed in the mosque. You know, but reality is there is a lot of repression there. But I want to hear more about your personal experience. I mean, what did you witness firsthand?
So, I've been, as I said, over half a dozen times. I've travelled throughout Israel, throughout the West Bank, and met Palestinians who live in Israel, as well as Palestinians who live actually in the Palestinian Authority controlled areas. And I've seen many things. But I remember actually being there in the holy city of Bethlehem. Now, many people in this country obviously know Bethlehem from Christmas and obviously the stories of the birth of Christ. But when you go to Bethlehem, it isn't what you see on a Christmas card. It's a town in which a wall, probably as high as anyone's house in Ilford, if not bigger, with gun turrets at certain intervals, encloses the whole of that town with one entrance in or out. It's essentially an open air prison. And I remember talking to a woman there, and her son was playing basketball. They drilled the basketball net into the wall, the actual barrier that the Israeli army had put in place. And she said that her family had looked after the land on the other side of that wall for hundreds of years. And yet, for the past few years, they've never been able to even go and visit that land. And her son was just throwing a basketball in that net drilled into this so-called security wall, which in many cases is nothing to do with security. It's actually about annexing land. I've met and talked to so many Palestinians who explain about how their kind of lives in so many systematic ways made difficult. The fact that often in Israel itself, planning laws are used to buy up Palestinian homes, or even in worse, to forcibly evict people from their homes. I actually joined a demonstration inside Israel, but with Palestinian Arabs, where we were actually occupying some buildings to prove a point about the heritage of that area not being just taken over by Israelis, because they were originally Palestinian buildings. And it was a symbolic gesture, but it was important because that was in a part of Israel which is near Galilee, and there are tens of thousands of Palestinians that live in that particular area. Their symbol is a key, because that key that they have on signs, and it's an Arabic inscription that's part of that key, and many of them use it as a sort of symbol so people understand what it's about, is about having the key to your original home, which their parents or their grandparents were forcibly kicked out of during the kind of what the Palestinians call the Nakba, the catastrophe, i.e. when Palestine was, the state of Israel was born, but when Palestinians were kicked out of their homeland. And, that was very, very powerful. I actually lived with a family there and listened to their stories, listened to the oppression, listened to the everyday lives that they lived. Also doing simple things, walking through checkpoints on foot with Palestinians trying to go about their daily business, having guns pointed at you, having, the humiliation of seeing people being searched for no reason at all in front of you, having guns put in your face by essentially teenage boy soldiers, for half the age of the old people that they were harassing. And this is the problem, is that every day, the daily grind of occupation creates a massive sense of resentment that people aren't able to live the normal life that any of us would expect. I've also seen, some optimistic things. I've met Israeli politicians who are actually committed to peace as well, and actually want to work with Palestinians to do that. And I think that, this is an important thing, that I don't want to be in a situation where we completely lose hope. But at the same time, we need to be absolutely unequivocal in condemning the actions of the Israeli government. They always use a sledgehammer to crush a nut. And, if you keep people caged like animals, then how can you expect them to behave if you are day after day humiliating them, not allowing them to work, confiscating their land, taking their houses, and as we've seen in the appalling situation in Sheikh Jarrah, actually forcibly evicting young children. And I think this is, caught the public's imagination. People have seen this and been shocked. But sadly, this is a daily occurrence. And it isn't just the Palestinian Arabs, the Bedouins, who are the sort of desert-dwelling communities as well. They've been often kicked out of areas that they live in and had, they've taken off of them.
Yeah, well, just thank you for that. We just wanted to comment on one of the fundraisers on the program as well. And in the last few days, we've seen so many protests outside in central London, around the United Kingdom, and to take a stance and to show the government that we are, in solidarity and in unison with the people, to send a clear, strong message. But with your experiences in, the House of Commons or in Parliament, do you feel that the government themselves, they're starting to hear this message loud and clear, or are they turning a blind eye to all of this?
I think too often, I'm afraid, with a Conservative government, they see their strategic allyship with Israel as more important than justice, actually, for Palestinians and the creation of a viable Palestinian homeland and a viable Palestinian state. But the reality is, giving that to Palestinians, giving them their own homeland, their own state, allowing that to properly come into being is actually the best way of securing a future for everyone that lives in the Holy Land. I think that, the British government need to do far more, because actually, on the whole, British foreign policy towards Palestine has been fairly consistently strong in condemning the actions of Israel. Our embassy there, does an awful lot of work supporting the Palestinians in their struggle and condemning the actions of the Israelis. But we need to really see far more firm words from Boris Johnson, from Dominic Raab, and actually for there to be real consequences. It's all well and good writing letters to Dominic Raab. It's all well and good them standing up in the parliamentary chamber and giving us words. But we need to see actions. We see concrete actions that, the Israelis will understand that there will be consequences if they continue to behave in such a barbaric and inhumane way.
Thank you very much, Sam Tarry. It's been a pleasure having you on this platform here with us. We really appreciate your support. We appreciate the fact that, it's something that all of humanity should come and speak about. It is a humanitarian cause where every human being deserves the right to roam freely, and that they shouldn't be restricted within any barriers, any walls, and especially not in the largest open air prison in the world. So thank you very much, Sam Tarry. We appreciate that, and you have a nice evening.
A pleasure.